2020. And based on the current public health concerns, I, Sarah Spivey, as head of the public body, don't believe that it's either practical or prudent to hold an in-person meeting of the Board of Education on February 10th, 2022. And I believe it's neither practical nor prudent to have the public present at our public body's regular meeting location. It is February 10th, 2022, 6:33 p.m. Gail, if you wouldn't mind, please call the roll for our virtual board meeting.
Yep. Lisa, would you like to do that?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, please.
That's all right.
Thank you, Gail.
Mr. Kovsky,
Here.
Ms. Moharaj,
Here.
Mr. Arkin,
Here.
Mr. Henry,
Here.
Mr. Martiri,
I'm here.
Ms. Harris,
Here.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
I am here. Thank you. All right. So for people who might be watching at home who are not aware of this, we are going to actually go straight into our closed session. Typically, we do that at the end of our committee of the whole meeting on committee of the whole night, but we're trying to make it more accessible for folks at home so that we have a consistent meeting start time. So the open portion of our committee of the whole is going to begin at 7:30, like it would for our regular board meetings as well on the fourth Thursday of the month. At this point, I would like to move that we enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in an educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor or a volunteer for the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Litigation when an action against affecting or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Moharaj,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Martiri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Ms. Kovsky,
Yes.
excuse me, and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes. All right. So everyone has their Zoom link in their emails. And for anyone, again, who's watching, we'll be back at 7:30 in open session.
Can I just, the Zoom link for the closed, when was that sent?
At 3:12 today, I'll resend it right now.
I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
thing just like tomorrow night. We're running around a 16. We're running the quarterfinals. As of right now, if the weight classes all stay filled with how they're filled, there'll actually be one wrestle back in that quarterfinal round, which will eliminate one wrestler from the tournament. We'll come back Saturday morning. We'll wrestle that second round of wrestlebacks, followed by the semifinals with wrestlebacks, at which time I
Okay, it looks like we have 1, 2. Four. All right, good evening, everyone. Okay, welcome back to open session. The next part of our agenda, forgive me, give me 1 second here, I gotta pull it up. Is public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per commenter and is not meant to be a dialogue with the board, but any questions that are asked during public comment, we do our best to respond within a week or so. I would also note that we have a board policy indicating that public comment should be 30 minutes, which we will be enforcing going forward. Lisa, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Our next item is the January 13th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. I move to approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections? All right. If you could please, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, our first item is on instruction. It's a strategic plan update. I will turn it to you, Greg.
All right, thank you very much. As we did at our regular board meeting just a few weeks ago, we are continuing with our updates to the board on progress to date, efforts to date on our strategic plan. And this week we begin priority 2, focusing on our supportive learning environment efforts led by Ms. Parker. And so she has her team here that is going to guide us through 3 main areas of our supportive learning environment priority. So with that said, Linda, I'm turning it over to you and your team.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Good evening, everyone. I'm joined tonight with our fabulous Director of Student Services, Ms. Faith Cole, and our wonderful lead dean, Janelle Bishop. And tonight we are just going to give you an overview of some of the actions we've been taking thus far on our supportive learning environment within the building. So I am going to share my screen. And get started. So as Dr. Johnson mentioned, we are working towards our strategic plan priority 2, which is part of the transformative education initiative, and supportive learning environment in specific is where we're at this evening. And we're going to give a brief introduction as to what's going on, but then go into our 3 areas of focus for this evening. And answer questions that some of the board has had in previous sessions that we've had before this evening. And then take some time for some questions and answers. With this being our plan, we wanted to make sure that it's recognized that we had 3 specific strategic goals guiding this work. And specifically, our work is around cultivating a learning environment that's supporting the holistic development and wellness of each of our students, but also all of our staff within our building. We are trying to make sure that every individual who walks in our building feels as though they are welcome, as though it is a safe environment and an environment that is conducive to the high level of learning that we've become accustomed to at our school. And we do believe that we are moving in the right direction with our planning and with some of our initiatives as we're presenting this evening. We're going to start with our MTSS update on our social, emotional, and behavioral work. And Ms. Cole is going to take this and get us started on the first strategic goal. So
just really quickly, as we make that transition, my apologies for jumping in, but if you could, just so the folks at home can see this a little bit better, if you could shift into presentation mode, that would be great.
Sure will, and I apologize for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Faith Cole, and I have the honor of serving as the Director of Student Services. As the board is already aware, one of the biggest focuses at OPRF has been around building those authentic relationships between our staff, our students, and then students with their peers. So for our strategic goal, number 8, our focus has been that by the spring of 2022, that we have made adjustments to our current SEL interventions when possible and added new interventions based on our school-wide data. Next slide, please. Oh, go back one more, Linda. Oh, I think okay, well, I'll just go ahead to the slide, tier 2 and tier 3. You can go back, Linda. Go for it, actually. Okay. So I think my tier 1 slides are not on there, but no worries at all. So one of the things too, when we think about MTSS, it's really designed as this multi-tiered system of support that provides support for students kind of depending on their needs and the needs of the community. So in the hopes of kind of getting this baseline for our students and their needs, this year we partnered with a platform called Panorama that provides students with a survey that allows them to self-report their feelings around social emotional needs and what their capacity is. And the reason this is so important is because we've never had an opportunity to really get a sense of where our students' social emotional needs are until this point. And so our tier 1 level supports are really intended for all our students. However, we know that this level of support will not impact all our students in the same way. And for that, they need more individualized support and instruction, which is our tier 2 and our tier 3 supports that are provided. So to talk a little bit about the tier 1 supports that we are particularly proud of this year, is advisory activities were developed in partnership with Umoja through the hard work of our MTSS SEB team, as well as teachers in the building. The activities were really designed for teachers to be able to work through SEL activities within their spaces when they meet with their advisory classes. In addition, this year we took part in some staff development to implement those school-wide agreements and those class-wide agreements within these spaces. And this is important because it gave an opportunity for both our students and our teachers to have voice in creating environments that are conducive to learning and their well-being. In addition, one of our tier 1 supports are positive school-wide behavior interventions, and I know Linda's going to talk about those at length a little bit later in the presentation. So now when we think about our tier 2 and our tier 3 interventions, again, these are designed for our students that need something different, more individualized to their needs. And so we were able to identify those students that need tier 2 and tier 3 supports in this area because of the platform, the Panorama platform, as well as our early warning system data. So some of our big focuses for our tier 2 and our tier 3 have been our social work groups. And I'm going to speak a little bit to that in a little bit later in the presentation. But one of the huge focuses and shifts that we had that I'm particularly proud of, as well as our dean team, is really providing more restorative practices and less punitive measures as it relates to students when it's behavior. Next slide, please. All right, so our social work groups. And so this is something that is new this year, and this is really developed out of the need of offering a instruction that's a little bit more directed towards those students that need something different. And so we offered 5 social work groups in various, based on the needs of our students. They were led by our social work teachers. They used curriculum as well as opportunities to have engaging conversations and really help teach students skills so that they're able then to use those skills out within their spaces within the building. Now, one of the things we also are doing is, because this is a new rollout, is that we're working to make sure that we are evaluating what's working well, and then if any additional modifications are needed to ensure the groups are being impactful to our students. We do this through, again, tracking the data, tracking attendance, as well as getting feedback from our students and our social workers. We're looking forward to rolling out our second social work groups in the coming weeks, but we will now have all the data from the entire school in order to do that. Next slide, please. All right, so next steps. So this is some of the things that we want to do as we continue moving forward this year. One of the biggest focuses last year, and we've continued that work, is around our circle practice. And so one of the things that we'll be offering with one of our social workers, as well as our prevention counselor, is lunch and learns that really focus around helping teachers build their capacity as it relates to circle practices. So these are short, kind of informal, but opportunities for teachers to learn more about circles and how they can utilize those within their classroom spaces. In addition, our Panorama benchmark screener, we'd like to administer this screener each year 2 to 3 times per year. This allows us to track data as a school and identify if there are additional tier 1 interventions that are needed. It also allows us to kind of track over time if our interventions that are whether they're working, if we need to make slight modifications, but it really provides us a better landscape of our entire school. and then brainstorming ways to really increase student engagement within the social work groups. And that's something we've been always thinking about and trying to, again, where students are excited, looking forward to the groups, but really they're having an engaging lesson that they're able to take back and then carry over into their school spaces. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Faith. And I believe the tier 1 slide that for some reason is missing from this presentation is in the documents that the board should have. So hopefully you were looking at that triangle. I'm so sorry about that. Our strategic plan goal 9 is focusing on, by 2022 of spring, implementing a plan to highlight and enhance student character traits and relational connections throughout the school. And this is falling under the area of our culture of the building work, which has been a big initiative throughout the entire building. The focus of this work was really about the look and feel of our entire environment and how the school is being experienced by all stakeholders when they are in the building. So this is adults and students alike. We started by establishing an interdepartmental committee that developed an action plan that continued to grow into different initiatives. The beauty of this group is that it is people from all aspects of our building, adult-wise, because we started with the adults in this. And when we came together, the whole mission was to be an action-oriented group, to try different things and then tweak them as we went along and to try new things so that we were making sure we were making an impact right away. We tried brand new approaches to different things within the school that may never have been tried before, and then also focused on making connections between the adults and the students in the building and building off relationships, but with students and staff. And so we wanted to create a common understanding throughout the school on expectations. When we came back from the pandemic, we noticed a lot of unease in terms of just social interactions. We had been away from one another and our environment for a year and a half, and you could tell that there was a strain on our capacity to how to socialize amongst the students and also just how to be high school students. And we realized as an institution of learning, we needed to make sure we focused on teaching students the expectations that we had, as opposed to just assuming or hoping that they had them. And so there's a lot of focus on that within the work that we have here. So there were some key initiatives that were done to work on shifting the culture within the building, a lot of which you have heard of or probably even seen from our students and staff. The return of the Pac was our model when we came back from the pandemic. We were trying to just create an environment that was happy to be back in the building and working towards making sure that everyone felt comfortable within the building. And so we did a lot of advertising around this, even amongst our athletics and within our school building and with our teachers, to just create a pride in being back into our building and together again. I created a Wednesday word communication that goes out to all staff in the building, faculty and staff, weekly, to make sure that everyone is connected with information on a consistent basis of things that are going on within our school building. We also have an idea sharing with the principal that happens for students and staff, which consists of weekly office hours for students, where for students, I actually go into their space and I'm in the Student Activity Center during lunch periods once a week. And then also for the staff, I create time so that they have a direct line to speaking to the principal to share ideas, but also to express any concerns or issues that they may be having as well. I also have students and staff who will email me often to express their concerns if they're not able to get to the weekly office hours. Staff Shoutouts was developed as well by this committee. And what that was is just to offer some praise and encouragement to our colleagues by means of a word cloud, which is just something you'll see in one of my slides that's coming up. And it gives the names of people who received shout outs from their peers just because of something they did that made an impact on someone else. Again, just building a place of excitement about where we are and camaraderie amongst our staff. Our Pac Pride Initiative began in the second semester, And it was all about building up our positive Husky habits. We wanted to make sure that beyond just wearing the orange and blue, all of our students and staff have a positive outlook on what it means to be a Husky and the pride that we spread around our building. This was going along with trying to make sure that we were building expectations and setting them for students so that they understood what it was that we were looking for within our building. And this was all about character. So these are not things that flow with any type of punishment if they don't happen. It's all about making sure we're developing the citizens that we want to have in our building for the future, making sure that they're prepared. We communicate this information out through advisory. We did push-ins where even our district level administrative staff went into advisory classrooms and talked to students about what these positive Husky habits were and why we want to have pride in our school and what that really truly means, and answered questions from our students. And then our advisory teachers also supported this work, as well as our Culture of the Building Committee. Through our collaboration with our news scene, which is our news video that comes out in our school, we have also created PSAs for the students to just help remember what these Husky habits are and why we do them. I've brought one of those PSAs to you today, and I want to allow you to take a look at this.
Remember to keep your Pac Pride values in mind. Here's a PSA about being respectful in the halls.
These Husky habits are so basic. Respect, responsibility, reliability. Do we really need a poster to tell us these things?
That's what I thought. And then I thought about my biggest pet peeves at school.
I cannot believe he said that. It was so rude. And he didn't even apologize.
Why did he have the nerve to say something like that to you?
Man, I just need to get to class. I have a test next period and I'm about ready to fail.
Let's try that again.
Gosh, I can't believe he said that.
That was
never
so
going
rude.
to.
Okay, let's hurry up because there's somebody behind us.
Yeah, I can talk to you about it at lunch.
Yeah.
Hey Huskies, have you ever felt frustrated when you're stopped in the halls or stairs on the way to class? Let's be respectful of each other's space and time and keep moving so that everyone can get where they're going. We also see you being more reliable by making an effort to get to class on time with the new hallway music as a reminder. We want to hear from you. If you have a suggestion for a school-appropriate song for the hallway countdown, use this QR code to fill out the attached Google form. And if you have an idea for a skit illustrating one of our Husky habits, or have time after school or during lunch or study hall to act in a skit, use this QR code to volunteer and give us your pitch. With your help, we can make OPRF a more pleasant place where we are all respectful, responsible, and reliable.
So one of the things that we have done in terms of we brought in student voice. It was very important to us that our students understood what this work was all about. And we also want them to be involved in the work. So as you could see from the PSA, we have students that are oftentimes very excited about spreading the word, but also just in addressing issues they deal with on a daily basis. One of the biggest concerns that gets brought to me is just how crowded our hallways are. And if we want our students to be on time for class, how do we make people move in the hallway so that we can move students to the places where they need to be throughout? And our PSAs are ways where students get a chance to speak on these things, but also in a way that relates to them, which is in skits and doing commercials during our news program. So I'm very excited about having that student voice, and we'll speak a little bit more about how we're bringing students more into the conversation as well. So additional initiatives that have come with our school culture shifting, we have a new raffle program for incentives called Parker Perks. And what it is, it's catching students in the midst of demonstrating great Husky habits. We're using this in our common areas throughout our building, and you'll see an example of what those Parker Perks look like coming up. But it's a way of our staff encouraging positive behavior by giving out these incentives that look like these little tickets to students. And the students are able to fill out the back of that ticket and put it in a raffle box. And we do raffles once a week on certain prizes that they can win throughout the rest of the school year. And we also do larger monthly raffles as well. But students have been really excited about receiving these perks as they are doing things. And it's also an opportunity for our staff outside of our faculty to encourage students and build relationships with them. I've seen several of our staff members walk students to the raffle box and along the way, really thanking the student for demonstrating the Husky habit that they did and encouraging them to do to continue doing that. And it's been quite the big thing for them. So it's been nice. We do have a new tardy procedure that was communicated, and what we're trying to impress upon students with this procedure is that we really want to focus on protecting instructional time. Every moment that they are in the classroom is important, and the teachers have worked hard on curriculum that allows students to grow. And we do know that every interruption in or out of the classroom actually can have an impact on learning for any individual student. So we're trying to get students to recognize that and make sure that they are in their spaces on time. And so far, this has been working for students because they needed a little extra push to get to the classroom. In order to help with this as well, we have started a musical minute in our hallways that you heard mentioned in the PSA as well. A little motivator to move along to class. In the last 60 seconds of our passing period, a song will come on and to remind students they have 60 seconds to get to their classrooms. And it has really been used as a reminder for students like, oh, I've got to go, I've got to get there. We have also been able to now use this music as a way of honoring different moments within our school. So for instance, this month for Black History Month, we actually had our school activity group, Blue, make suggestions of different musical works by Black artists to actually play. So that is working this week. We're actually playing Glory this particular week by Common and John Legend. And it changes each week, the music does. And so kids have been having fun with that, and adults as well as students have been key to the selections that have been picked. And as you saw in the PSA, we have a QR code for students to make suggestions on the selections for this music. And then the hall sweeps that we have, hall sweeps are actually mechanisms that after the tardy bell has rung, students are requested to report to one location, where in that space we have our team of staff who comes in and works with our students to just remind them of the importance of getting to class on time. I do it as a conversation that I will say is similar to if a student doesn't make it home in time for curfew. We want to have a conversation about, improving that behavior so that we are not in this situation again. All students are sent back to their classes with a hall pass, usually within the first 10 minutes of core class. And this has been something that has been on the radar of students and has really made them also want to make it to their classes each period. These are just some examples of the items that we use within our building that go along with what I just spoke to, the Parker Perks at the top. You'll see the poster that the students were standing at in the PSA of the Husky habits. We have a new universal hall pass that we are using where students have to have it, has to be current and is used in our halls, along with the hall sweep pass and the QR code that's used for the students in order to have the music. Students seem to be very excited about these different things, and it has grown on them. Of course, when you start any initiative, it's kind of like, why and what are we doing? But they've really come to understand and have been also offering us ways to modify what we're doing in order to make things better. For our next steps, we are, as I said, looking for more ways to involve student voice, and that is going to bring on our Pac Pride Advisory Student Ambassadors, who are going to be individuals who help us communicate messages in their advisory spaces. We also have been utilizing the voices of those students in the Superintendent Student Advisory Council as well, in terms of getting feedback and making changes. We're going to expand Parker Perks so that you can earn them in more of our common spaces beyond the lunchroom, and then also continue setting the expectations for citizenship by teaching students the good character qualities that we're looking to enhance. And there is a look at our word cloud as it is presented to our faculty and staff that just shows when they are recognized by their peers and how it is presented to them every Wednesday. Next, we go to Strategic Plan Goal 10, and this is going back to Faith Cole and Janelle Bishop.
Wonderful, thank you, Linda. And the Parker perks are so adorable. So sometimes kids want one, but they're so cute, I don't want to give mine away. But I know that's not what the purpose is, but they are absolutely adorable. And so super excited, just the feeling in the building, everything just feels really positive. So thank you for that. So for our strategic plan goal number 10, this is by the fall of 2023. Our goal will be to continue building a safe and inclusive community environment around all our common spaces. And so when we think about this, our student and staff are really kind of working to build relationships with one another as the primary means for including student voice in important conversations, continue to promote less punitive ways to address student conduct, and promote greater connectiveness in school spaces. Next slide, please. So again, these are our focuses: building relationships, including student voice, and having less punitive ways to address student conduct. Next slide. So for the start of the 2021-2022 school year, this was the first year that we had fully implemented our BEP, which is our Behavior Education Plan, as well as having our entire student body back in person. So our students returned to us in varying degrees with different social emotional needs, and some of our students returning with trauma, as well as some of our staff. And so our behavior plan has been developed to provide a less punitive and more restorative lens to all our disciplinary measures. And the reason this is particularly so important now is because our students and our staff really need something different. One of the things I'm particularly proud of is our dean team. They work together weekly to problem solve and to really ensure that we are being consistent and deliberate around our disciplinary practices. And the reason this is so important, because we want to make sure that each of our students, regardless of what team they're on, what dean they're working with, that they really have an effective decision that's been made on their behalf. But in addition to the disciplinary measure portions, our big focus is around that restorative work. And so how are we preparing students either go back into the classroom, go back into their school environment, and really build their capacity around that. In addition to that, we work with our PSS teams to really be thought partners around our students, and whenever possible to provide some of those preventative measures so that we are able to have students earlier on and making sure that we're supporting them to the best of our ability. And so again, some of those focuses around building relationships, and this is one of those things that I do feel that our teachers and staff really have provided a welcoming environment within our school and as well as our community on a daily basis. And this makes a tremendous impact. The work that's happening within the classrooms with teacher-led classroom interventions really allows for most of the restorative work to happen within the classroom so that students do not have to leave the classroom, and often can de-escalate behaviors and keep them at the classroom level. And this is hard work, but our teachers, like I said, have done a lot of the pre-work in building relationships, setting those community agreements early on so that they're able to really have some of those meaningful conversations. In addition, student voice, and I know Linda spoke to this, one of the things that I think we do particularly well at Oak Park is that student leadership groups provide a platform to share their thoughts around our school-wide behavior. And so I know you guys saw a video for students kind of explaining a little bit about what they want and what they hope. But oftentimes a lot of the incentives and things that we're putting into place is because students have given us feedback around what they potentially want to have different, insights they're having from their student lens. And I know Principal Parker also talked about giving students opportunities to give feedback and suggestions, and they take her up on that offer. I mean, there's students, the regular students that come, there are also students that even send emails, again, just to kind of give their insight as a student and what they feel would be helpful. And again, with that huge focus about being those less punitive disciplinary responses, we do this because we know that the BEP has actually decreased those use of some of those disciplinary responses that in the past maybe would have had our students out, either in school reflection or out of school suspension. And so in our preliminary data, what we're seeing is about a 21% drop in the number of days served in school reflection compared to last year, and a 16% drop in the number of days served in out of school suspension. And we believe this is happening because our restorative efforts being implemented school-wide. In addition, our security team is taking part in de-escalation training and also are collaborating with our Dean team on a regular basis. So this really is a school-wide approach. In addition, we're really being consistent upon improving our efforts and doing better at tracking our restorative efforts and kind of what we see successfully and how our students are doing after we've had a restorative conversation. Our focus will always continue to be on improving the experience for our learners, both social, emotionally, and academically. And then at the current time, we're hoping for some of our next steps are continuing evaluating the BEP each school year to determine if changes are needed. In addition, continuing staff development around trauma-informed care, because as we know, the ongoing needs for our student and our staff are going to be years to come. And so we want to make sure that our staff are well prepared to help and manage and support our students. Next slide, please.
So we have left time now for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everyone's face.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Ralph.
All the right things, so I lower my hand and unmute myself. Thank you for the presentation, and really I appreciated the support materials too. And Linda, you were right. You know, the triangle is in the materials provided to the board, so we did get to see that. So don't worry about that at all. We got that information, and it was helpful.
Thank you.
He's still talking, isn't he?
No. Ralph,
I muted myself because I'm incompetent with technology, which is funny. I actually taught a course on technology law at Northwestern Law School, and I cannot turn a computer on and make it do what I want it to do. So there you go. My questions come out of the reading. So you gave us this nice detailed memo, and on page 6 of it, it starts with the sentence, and I'm just going to read it. I'm going to ask you off of this sentence. Setting clearer parameters and positively reinforcing we are seeing an effect on student outcomes. Grammar aside, what are the effects on student outcomes that you're seeing? Because the memo didn't get into that. And I would kind of like to know that. And my other question is also off of the reading, but that was my first one.
So in particular and specific, and I'm sorry, I'm not looking at that page of the document, so I'm going to answer in terms of the culture of the building. The students, in terms of how they're responding and reacting to the initiatives that we are putting out, has been, like, as I said, starts off a little rocky, but also has students showing us through surveys and screeners that they are taking that it's making an impact. And so we haven't yet collected all of the data, but from the preliminary information that we're pulling, we can tell that it's making a difference, even in them saying, we want to modify some things, but for right now, we do see that it's working and it's making an impact.
Okay, so you just weren't, so I'm understanding now the memo better. So you just weren't ready to give us some of that data yet because you're still in the process of collecting it.
Correct.
We are going to get the data that demonstrates these impacts you're seeing. Awesome.
Correct. Targets have been identified. Absolutely.
That was my first question. My second question, you included a number of charts that showed, like, for instance, coping skills were one of the interventions, and that there were 6 sessions. There were the number of students invited. How many actually went? Because it just said the number invited for each of these things. It didn't say the number that actually attended.
I can actually speak to that. And so I think overall, I want to say off the top, I want to say we had, where it gets a little tricky. So we invite, I want to say it's around 60 students, and this is just off the top. And I can get those numbers to you. And I think what we looked at is consistency. So we had most of our students attended at least 1 session. Then we had some students that attended maybe 2 sessions, other students that attended the whole time. And so we started to look at that. We were looking at, like, what's the percentage of students that are attending maybe 3 to 4 times. And so that our attendance overall, I don't think the social workers or myself were really pleased with the attendance of our groups. And so we talked a little bit about, are we targeting the right type of students? When these groups are happening, are they at the most appropriate times? So right now what we're doing is they're one time a week, but they're different periods. So a student is hypothetically missing, I think it's 2 lunch periods and 3 class periods in order to provide, like I said, some of this direct instruction. But what we're finding is some students attended the whole thing, some students just attended one session. And so we're really trying to get, hypothesize why that might be. But I think our focus for this next time around is going to be students we had between the 0 and the 20th percentile, which is our tier 3 and our tier 2, and really maybe deciding to separate out our tier 3 students, which would be getting more of a one-on-one support, because those were the students we were seeing that weren't coming back on a regular basis. And then our tier 2 students seem to do well in these type of groups. Those are going to be kind of our focus for these social groups. But that's the students we invited, and we did have a few parents that decided to opt out of it. But for the most part, the students were invited. It was just really inconsistent around their attendance.
Great. So from a board perspective, that's a great answer, by the way. Thank you. From a board perspective, our one of our responsibilities is just monitoring and accountability.
Absolutely.
So what might be helpful for us in that role would be if you updated these graphics. They're very helpful. I mean, I really applaud you on the materials. I think the materials were great. And as you can tell, I'm a nerd. I read through them and was going through the tables and stuff. And so it'd be helpful to know the number of students that actually attended versus invited, to see if there's changes in that over time. And then we could understand how and why you're changing different approaches and times, and be more supportive of your actions, and maybe even help devote some resources your way. So having the data and knowing where things aren't going according to Hoyle is a really helpful thing for the board to help you adjust mid-course and get things where you want them to be. And so that's how we could work on a more collaborative basis. So having that data would be great. And I just want a big picture. This is best practice, what you guys are doing. And I want everyone to know this is best practice. This is evidence-based practice. And if done right, this multi-tiered support system, if implemented with fidelity and done right, really does drive and enhance student outcomes across the board. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking such a thoughtful and evidence-based approach. It's the right thing to do. Please arm us with all the data, good and bad, so we could support it. We could understand why changes in course need to happen and be supportive of those when they come up. But overall, just kudos for taking this approach and doing this work. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the feedback.
Thanks, Ralph. Tom?
Wow, got my hand down quickly after. So one comment and a couple quick questions. First, I echo what Ralph said. I mean, I think the moves that have been made in this area in the last few years towards best practice is phenomenal. So I appreciate the efforts there. I had two questions for Faith based on the what she shared and spoke to today, both kind of tied to the pandemic. So I'm just trying to understand first, what kind of changes are we seeing in the quantity of students, needing tier 2 and tier 3 as we come out of the pandemic, and what the impact is. I'm gonna ask both questions because they're somewhat tied. Okay. And the second one is that you did report that the drop in-school suspensions, and you said versus last year. So is that, I'm just trying to understand again, are we comparing it to, because last year, I think last year we were remote, right?
Yes.
So am I hearing that right, or is that really meant to be pre-pandemic?
Yes, and so I actually can speak to both of those. And so the first question just around coming, still in the midst of the pandemic, how are students presenting as it relates to kind of their social emotional needs? And we have seen, and we'll be sharing the data with the board in, I believe in a couple months, just around the disciplinary, some of the infractions. And some of the things we've seen a particular high increase has been around substance. So that's vaping and that's various other substances. And so that tells us quite a bit from student services standpoint, is that our students, like I said, are finding coping, ways to deal with whether it's trauma, whether it's fear, anxiety, more so than they ever have, And so preliminary, our vaping, our infractions for substance has, I think it's maybe quadrupled what it was in the past year, just based on that. We also have quite a few interventions in place to kind of support that. But that right there is telling us that our students, one of the areas that we're seeing a particularly huge increase in that. In addition to that, what we're also seeing in some cases that some of our students are reporting having eating disorders. And so we also are mindful that even though we have capacity to work with students, we just want to make sure that we're getting ahead of that too. And so that's why it's incredibly important, particularly for our social workers, to really kind of stay current with what's happening in the surrounding communities. Because what we're seeing at OPRF aren't things that we don't see in other communities. And so if there are resources, what we've started to do is be a little bit more proactive around how our students might be presenting. So we had somebody come in to talk to our social workers, particularly about eating disorders and how they can support students and families, doing a lot more about prevention and wellness and trying to really kind of get in front of those needs. So our students, the way they're showing up right now is we're seeing a lot more students needing more one-to-one support from social workers and more in situations where they're really kind of, I don't want to say crisis mode, but things that maybe aren't necessarily planned. And so we're seeing a lot more students kind of coming to those spaces when they really need some support with that. Our counselors are also being given tools, so they're able to support sometimes in those situations where students need to be de-escalated. But we are seeing a huge increase in just needs of students around that social emotional piece and really trying to arm our staff so they have the ability and those tools to kind of support them. But when we show the data and the kind of infractions, although we've seen decreases in some areas, we do see in other areas where students are really kind of coping or causing some of those issues. Does that kind of answer your question?
Can I just add to that? The data comparison is from first semester of 1920. So it is not last school year when we were mostly remote and then hybrid learning. So when we're referencing the metrics in particular, it is from first semester of the last time that we were in building full time. And we will have more specific numbers when we are here to present the discipline report.
Thank you.
And I think I would also add, Tom, just in terms of behaviors and what we feel are results of having been out of school for so long and having not been, Linda mentioned it, in school or in a traditional school the way kids were used to. I do think at the start of the school year, we as a building felt that in a number of ways. We had things happening at games, we had a lot of behaviors, and it was really rough in the beginning. And even while implementing the BEP, though it was approved quite some time ago, it was really implemented this school year. And so we kind of had to struggle through the beginning, trying to figure out what in the world is going on here. And we realized that we weren't alone. We realized that, schools nationwide were suffering from some of the same things as kids got reacquainted with what traditional schooling looks like. And so we were seeing things, and one of the bullet points mentioned on the slide about student voice, to the extent that we actually brought student groups in to talk specifically about certain behaviors that we were seeing that were pretty widespread, to just talk and remind kids about how they are needed to show up here and make the environment positive for others. So we felt that in terms of the pandemic fatigue and frustration and the trauma that people came in with. We certainly felt that at the beginning of the year. I do think that things have smoothed out pretty significantly since the beginning.
I think to Janelle, to that point too, I think the team stayed the course. This type of work, the restorative work, is so much harder. It takes so much more time, so much more deliberateness. And the team, like I said, to their credit, me being new, really kind of stayed the course particularly when it was very, very difficult. So I'm grateful to the team for that.
Thank you. Kabreev? You are still muted.
There we go. Just a quick comment. I just want to thank you guys for the work you've done and you're doing. This was something I was really looking forward to getting an update on. Last meeting, even when the school year started, because we know we've been through a rough 2 years, these students, grown-ups, everyone, but the focus you had on the students and the intentionality of your work. So I want to thank you guys for doing it. I like to see where this goes as the semesters continue, years continue, because the data points they will settle at some point, right? And then you have a better understanding where we are, because the numbers for depression, anxiety amongst teens have skyrocketed over the pandemic, for adults too. So I know there's some nuances we won't quite see, until we get a more steady progression of, I guess, when you chart it out. But I just want to thank you guys for the work you've done. It's so important. Mental health is so important. And as you all know, a lot of you probably know, during the pandemic, it was exemplified even more important to take care of your mental health and self-care. So anything you guys need as far as get participation up or ideas, I mean, I'm not sure what I can do, but as a board, you have our full support. Won't talk for everybody, but yeah, my full support. I'm sure everyone else feels the same way too, because it's imperative. If kids can't go to school and feel comfortable and safe, they're not going to learn. So just again, thank you for all you guys are doing.
Appreciate that. And the culture of the building committee is watching, so they are most appreciative of hearing that as well. So thank you.
Ralph?
Yeah, two things I forgot to oh shoot, I have my hand still up. Two things I forgot to mention, but they're follow-ups to prior stuff. So one of the earlier requests made, not to this version of the board, but to the prior version of the board I served on, was a need for more tier 2 interventionists at the school. I was highly supportive of it at the time. When you look at evidence-based practices and you look for statistically meaningful correlations to enhancing student outcomes, the relationships with having an adequate number of really good tier 2 interventionists to moving student achievement forward is more than 10 times statistically significant. It's one of the best things you could do under the evidence-based model. So my question is, I don't know if you still need more tier 2 interventionists or if you're doing some sort of analysis of your resource and personnel needs. But when we discuss at the board level sort of how to reallocate resources to get better student outcomes, I would like to understand how the need for or lack of need for a tier 2 interventionist fits in. Because I would be very supportive of shifting resources that way over time if you as a team felt you needed it. So I was remiss for not mentioning that. I'm looking at my notes for things I meant to ask, and so oops. And then the other one was the Umoja. Just do you have and you don't need to answer this today if you don't have the answer at the top of your head, but do you have a track record for Umoja actually moving forward a school district on a student outcome basis if their suggested processes are actually implemented with fidelity, what their track record is on gaining student achievement? And you may or may not have that yet, but that would certainly be valuable information for us to know as a district and at the board level. So I don't need an answer to that today, honestly, but I would like to see if we can get one. Thank you.
Just two things with that too, Ralph. With the first piece, I will say moving to a evidence-based model of MTSS and pulling data that says which students need this support, believe it or not, uncovers a lot of students who may not have been used to this level of service. Like, these are not the students who would typically go to social workers themselves or visit. Not that there's any thing against it, they just didn't usually do that. And so part of the help that I've seen us in need of is just more communication and education of the students around what this is, and it not being a bad thing that you need to, perhaps, go to a skill group. And that would help with the attendance portion, just so that students didn't feel like, it's so foreign. It's getting them used to and understanding why this can be of help for them. So that would be in one area of need. And then I can definitely get that data from Umoja. I do want to mention that we have not been using them as we used to, only because they were successful in getting us prepared for the work. So we have more in-house work happening in terms of us leading our own work from the inside, which has proven to be very successful. But we do use them to consult at times on different issues. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Gina, Fred, or Marianne, did you want to comment on this at all?
Sorry, great work.
Thank you.
You don't have to if you don't want to. I don't mean to pressure anyone.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you very much for this. I love the creativity too around some of these ideas around building culture with the Perker Perks. I think it's brilliant. The music, I wish I'd had that. I'm very jealous. So I think I love the creativity and I love sort of the whimsy around some of it too. I think that's really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Thank you very much for that very good report. All right, Greg, our next item is, let's see, looks like we have some finance items.
Yeah, we have two finance items for us to discuss, and we have two folks in the meeting right now to help guide us through them. Carolyn Gust is here to answer any questions you might have about the bid results for the contract for athletics and student activities and the Ideal Charter. I want to point out to the board that Carolyn caught today earlier that one of the contracts was added late to this. So the second one that's added, the Ideal Charter LLC contract and exhibit, was added a little late. So if you haven't had a chance to go through that too thoroughly, first of all, our apologies for that. If you haven't had a chance to go through that too thoroughly, obviously it's available right now, and we won't be bringing this, for the board to vote on until 2 weeks from now. So, please bring those questions if you have any and haven't had a chance to form them yet to the meeting at the regular. But with that said, Carolyn is here to answer any questions you might have.
Questions on the contract? I don't see any at this time, although perhaps there will be. Oh, Tom.
I'm just, this is on the bids, correct? I guess I'm pleasantly surprised to see, reductions in rates. Am I reading the right memo?
Yes, you are.
And can you provide a little bit of explanation of how that comes to be?
So what I did was, thanks for the question. That's a great question. What I did was when I put the bid documents together, I structured the pricing differently than they have been doing their pricing. So they were kind of forced to price it out the way that I was looking for. For example, the out of town costs, they didn't have a set cost for that. It was like an hourly plus mileage. Which is pretty standard for charters, but the way that the bid docs were formulated, they had to answer it the way that I was asking them to. So it looks like we're going to do really well. And I wish that I could have given you like a solid number, but with, like a total, we're going to save 50,000 or something like that. But with it relying so much on, the ability of first student to meet our needs for some of the athletic stuff that are close by. They're still having trouble getting drivers. So I was hopeful I could give you that, but I did my best.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we can go to the prom contract.
Yes, and I can't tell you how thrilled we are to bring a prom contract to you in the hopes that we will have a full, gosh, do I jinx us? Regular prom later on this school year. I shouldn't have said that. My apologies, everybody. But Susan is here with any questions you might have about this contract. As you can see, of most importance, I think, in the memo is the history of the pricing, and that we are still at the cost that we were at back in 2020 when we experienced our first cancellation of prom. So if there are any questions, Susan is here.
Questions from any board members?
Yes. My question is this: the contract, the thing at hand is the contract and approval of the contract. Also included in the memo is referencing the fees and charges associated with prom. So is that part of the approval? I'm pleased with the contract as it is. I think that's good. My question more relates to the fact that based on this, the cost is $65 per student and the charge is $110 per student. And, you know, I understand that there's some other cost. Well, I don't understand all the pieces, but is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, Susan, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, so the cost of the food is $65 per student, and then there's service fees and taxes added on to that. And then we also have extra fee, like extra costs that we put into this. So there's different vendors that we have that service Prom. It ends up zeroing out in the end.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
You know, no question, Tara, but my daughter didn't get prom. And she's now a sophomore at Illinois Wesleyan University, getting a BFA in acting. Very proud of her. And if you don't think prom matters, she still talks about not having a senior prom. And it really was an impact for her to deal with in not a positive way. So I am thrilled. And I hope it happens. And Greg, you did not jinx us. By God, it will happen. Right. And I want all these kids that are in our senior year to have the opportunity to attend their senior prom.
As we all do. Any other questions? Okay. All right, then we have some policies for first reading.
Yeah, so these are, the board will remember, not too long ago, we brought a large flight of policies for first reading. And these were ones that we just wanted to do a bit more vetting on before we brought them for discussion. And so we have 7 here. I don't know if the board, wants a deliberative process to go through, policy by policy. My guess is not, but I think in short of doing that, if there are any questions about any policies, our team is here to address them.
Ralph.
Yeah, not a question, more of a comment. So policy 220 and policy 5120 both require the superintendent, or in one case, superintendent's designee, to create protocols. And I think there should be some timing associated with that, right? On or before the beginning of the semester, first semester, fall year, whatever, so that, protocols could change from time to time. So when those protocols need to be in place, I think a timing mechanism should be added. That's my only comment on those. And for those who didn't have an opportunity to see, I asked the question very late. I did ask the question if section policies 5250 and 5330 were fully compliant in all ways with our collective bargaining agreement, and they are. So the answer was yes. And so that's great to know. I think we just as a board need to highlight, if in fact the collective bargaining agreement that we enter into now changes any of those items, we should put those policies back on the table for revision. That's it. Just those 2 quick little comments.
And point taken. Thank you, Ralph.
Any questions from any of the board members? Okay. All right. So now we have future agenda items. I don't know if any board members would like to suggest any future agenda items. We do have a fair amount that are sort of pending, and the administration's been really good about sending us status updates on when those are coming before the board. Marianne? Did we just lose her?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
Oh, there you are. Okay, yeah.
I was going to raise this as a future agenda item, but I actually think it might be a question for the strategic plan, transformative, supportive learning environment folks. So, so sorry to jump back. And I don't have a good articulation of this. So if you guys can just be patient with me for a second while I try and explain what I'm asking. I feel like I don't have a good understanding of what the process is for students who need help in a variety of ways, but don't feel that they either don't feel that the school resources are helpful to them, or don't feel empowered to ask for those resources. and I guess, and I'll give you just a couple of examples. One is from one of my college students recently, who we were in class at the end of class a couple days ago, and we're working on thesis statements for their first papers. And he kind of came up very shamefacedly at the end of class and said, I know I should know this. I'm an English major, but I haven't written a paper in 2 years, and I don't remember how to do a thesis statement, right? And so he was able to ask, and I was like, well, I can have office hours right now. Why don't we go work on it? So we were able to go work on it. And, in like 10 minutes, it took care of, he did know it. He just needed to be reminded, but he had been very stuck up until that point, right? And similarly, I've talked to an OPRF student who, really needed to talk to a counselor, but had somehow got it in their head that the counselors were not helpful. They'd, heard through the grapevine or whatever else. And so we're just not going. We're unwilling to go. And then my own daughter has some, I think, ADD related, like when she gets stressed, she stops keeping track of her tasks, and then suddenly the mid-semester grades come, and like there are all these missing assignments, and her grades have dropped dramatically. And we're at home, and we can, we have the capability to help her get caught up, and thankfully the teachers have been generally very generous about letting her and presumably all the students make up work. But I keep thinking like, well, if she didn't have parents at home with the leisure to like help her get through this, she would probably just have her grades like drop 3 grades this semester for no really good reason, right? So I guess my question is, I know you identify students that are in real trouble and you reach out to them through these tiers. I'm wondering, like, at that early stage of identification, when the students are maybe not expressing that they're in trouble in a variety of ways, what is the process? I hope this makes sense as a question.
Yes, actually it does, Marianne. And one of the reasons the MTSS is so important is because it's not waiting on a student to ask for help. The data that we pull is actually from information coming in from what they're doing on attendance, grades, and behavior. And it comes into what we call early warning system data. And from that, we're able to tier out what students may need and assign them based off of meetings with their PSS personnel, which is the social worker, the dean, and the counselor, to decide exactly who needs to take the screener when it's a tier 2 or tier 3 need. And then that screener helps us to see what skills may need to still be developed and find out what the proper resource would be for the student. Alternatively, they talked about the universal screener that we did for all students, which was just to get a idea of where all of our students were building wide. And we are still working to make sure that we get all of our students to complete that survey. I think at this point we have a little over 60% of them who have, but we are using that data to figure out what resources are necessary given where the students are falling on that. So it's not as dependent on them just needing to ask for help, but it's kind of like figuring it out from their learning needs that are being exhibited throughout the day. That does not preclude a student from telling us what they need and finding them a resource as well, because we do have some tier 1 supports like EF tutoring that happens throughout the day, and different places that can be that they can be directed to if they needed help as well.
Yeah, so that's helpful. I think I understand the structure a little better from a parent's point of view. So if there's a parent who's in a situation similar to mine where they know their kid could use some support and the kid is resistant to it, would you direct us to like contact the advisor first? Like what's the right approach at that point? Does that make sense?
Yes, we do. Like it would be the counselor, because the counselor's kind of plugged into the teachers as well to find out how this is manifesting in the classroom, and then speak to the student and the parent in terms of like what would be the best resource available for the student. So absolutely, they know how to activate in order to refer to the proper resource.
Okay, that's really helpful. Sorry, parent of a freshman here, so I'm still figuring all of this out. So thank you so much.
Yes, and counselors and social workers do visits to their advisories. The one thing to remember is that a social worker has about triple the number of advisories that the counselor does, because the counselors, there are 15 of them, but there are only 5 social workers, but they do get visited. So you can also ask, like, in terms of visits to their advisor, you know, have they seen their counselor? And it's a way to make sure that that relationship is getting built as well in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any future agenda items? Okay, I'm going to move to adjourn, but we do have our special board meeting after this. We've got some personal action items, so please don't go away, board members. Is there a second on my motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our administrators. That was a great presentation on the MTSS. So have a good night.
Are we in the same Zoom?
We are in the same Zoom and we will reopen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't think I saw another one, but I'm not.
Yeah,
keeping
no,
good count.
we can stay put. It's weird because this is a different format for us for committee of the whole. So that was a good question because I might have actually logged out. Okay, all right. So now we are moving on to our special board meeting. 1 second. All right, we are still virtual. It is Lisa, I'm assuming you're okay with us starting, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it is February 10th, 2022. It's 8:36 p.m. I'd like to call to order the special board meeting of the Oak Park and River Forest High School Board of Education. We are still virtual. We're still operating under Governor Pritzker's declaration, disaster proclamation. And based on these public health concerns, I find that there is, it's not practical or prudent to have an in-person meeting of our board tonight, nor is it practical or prudent to have public access to the building. Lisa, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Martiri,
Here.
Ms. Harris,
Here.
Mr. Kowski,
Here.
Ms. Maharaj,
Here.
Mr. Arkin. He's here.
I'm here. Sorry, I had trouble unmuting.
No worries. Mr. Henry,
Here.
Ms. Spivey.
I am here as well. All right, so public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening for our special board meeting?
No public comment for our special meeting.
All right, thank you. And we have one action item this evening. I move to approve the personnel recommendations, including new hires, transfers, retirements, resignation, and releases as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Give that one to Mary Ann.
Lisa, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Martiri. Okay, Mr. Martiri.
I said yes. Was I not muted? Was I muted?
You were muted. That's okay. Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Kowski?
Yes.
Ms. Maharaj?
Yes.
And Ms. Spivey?
Yes, thank you. All right, we've got another future agenda item section. I'm assuming there's still no future agenda items. Is that right? All right, everyone, it's a record. Congratulations. It's 8:39 p.m.
So moved. Let's go. Second.
right.
We're out of here.
Second.
Good
So
night,
moved.
everyone. Take care. See you
right.
on Monday.